least one verse. I trust it'll be one that you'll take with you after you've heard it enough times, and it will be an encouragement to you wherever you go. Brother?
Salvation to come. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in His face, and this world will grow strangely dim in the light of His grace.
All right, any children would like to join the children's meeting in the back are certainly welcome to do that. Any adults, sorry, you can't. Well, good to see you. Thanks for coming back here tonight. You know, you never know when it's your first time speaking at some place who's going to show back up, and after you've preached one message, you know. And thanks for being here tonight, and hope you had a good afternoon. We enjoyed our afternoon and the opportunity to be over at Ben and Elizabeth's place, and I get to be with them and the Comptons as well, and certainly that was a wonderful time of fellowship and hearing what God's doing in lives and what He has done. Let's take our Bibles tonight, jump right into the Word of God. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6, if you would please, tonight. Ephesians chapter 6. if you're doing a family meeting, it's pretty much impossible to speak on the family without visiting Ephesians 5 and 6 at some point over the course of that meeting, certainly. And what I want to share tonight is something that the Lord has worked in my heart about, and I feel like it's something I'm definitely still growing in personally, but something I've just been so convicted about and seen my own need for, and so I hope it'll be a help for you here tonight. Back in Milwaukee, we have a home that we own, and we bought it about almost 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years ago this fall, and you can remember that because we bought it. I went to look at the house when I was in the hospital when my daughter Jana was born. So if I can remember how old she is, I remember how long we've been in the house. See, and so about 10 years ago, and over the course, it took us about a year probably we were in the house before I started the project, but then ever since then I've been working on finishing our basement. And I don't know if, do y'all have basements down here in Alabama? Not really. Okay, I didn't think so, but we have basements up there in Wisconsin. It's pretty typical, pretty common thing, and I've been trying to, it was unfinished, and so I've been just slowly working on that over the time. And when I have time and money to do that, and it seems like those things often don't come at the same time. And so, but when I have those the resources and the time to do it, I try to work. I'm almost done. I have been for a couple of years, but I'm almost done. And I just have the bathroom left to finish up, and then I'll have to start repairing stuff that I did, 10 years ago. But we had most everything in the basement I've done myself. I mean, we did everything from either that or with the help of a friend or something. But I haven't hired out pretty much anything except for some electrical work that I was required by the city to do, to hire somebody for. I guess they had to be licensed and so forth. And then I had hung all the drywall, but got to that place where it was time to do all the drywall mudding. And I can do drywall, sheetrock work, I can do it. I'm just slow, and I'm a perfectionist. And so that makes me even slower. And I don't enjoy it at all. And so I'd gotten a first coat on most of the basement and was trying to finish up one section. And I finally looked at my wife. I said, "This is going to take me a year at this pace." And I said, "I wonder if I just try to contact somebody, and I've got some friends who have had some work done, and just get a quote to see how much it would cost." And so I called a guy that a friend recommended, and he came in and looked around and said, "Okay, I think we can finish this for X amount of dollars." I said, "You're hired." And it was because time is money, okay? And at that point I said, if he can come in, and in a couple of days, him and another guy that was part of his crew came in, and they took, again, what would have taken me months to complete at the rate I was going. And so I was excited. We finally got the sheetrock all done, all put up there, and all finished off. It was ready to go. And I did the painting. Okay, I can do that. That's no problem. And so we got the painting, got the full coat of paint on there, and it was done. It was finished. It was beautiful. I was so happy. And then a couple days later, I come down, and there's this massive dent in the wall that's white, which means the paint wasn't there anymore. And I go around the corner, and there is it looks like somebody took a drill bit and drilled a hole in my drywall. Just finished. Somebody must have broken into our house. That must be what happened. No, remember, I have 9 children. Okay, at the time, I probably had 7 children, but. And can I tell you, in that moment, I was irritated. I couldn't believe it. I probably should say I was livid. That would probably be, less spiritual sounding if I said that, and it probably is close to accurate. And in that moment, can I tell you, I had a choice, all right? Because everything inside of me wanted to just line those kids up and light into them. Because this is brand new, freshly painted, finished drywall. I mean, hey, listen, this was time, this was money we spent, and it was just, literally somebody took a nail and dug a hole in the wall is what I found out happened. I know that probably would never have happened in your house, but it happened in mine. Oh, I wonder, has your child ever done anything that irritated you? Maybe it'd be better to ask, has your child ever done something that didn't irritate you? I don't know. Yeah, of course your children have done things that irritated you. They're humans, all right? Has your spouse ever done something that irritated you? Oh, God, that was a little quieter response. Of course, they're humans, right? But what about this question? Have you ever done something that irritated your child? See, that's a little different. And that's the issue that Paul actually addresses here in Ephesians chapter 6. When he turns the corner, of course, he begins chapter 6 talking directly to children. And if I was speaking to the children tonight, it would be well for me to preach on children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. Absolutely would be right to preach on that. But after he finishes speaking to the children, and he's kind of walking through different levels of, different people groups within the church there, he comes to verse number 4 and says here, "And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord." Now he says, "And ye fathers." And I do not want to take away from the inspired words of Scripture in any way. I believe that there's a reason that he says, "And ye fathers," dealing with this issue of provoking your children to wrath. It certainly is a reality. That's something that we as men can easily do. I think it's right in the context of all that's being said. Certainly this doesn't mean that a mother could not do this. It's talking about parents, but it doesn't use the word parents. It says fathers. And so men, I'm not saying the message tonight is not for the ladies in the room. It is. It applies in every way, the same way. But I think the Spirit of God, in His wisdom, narrows it in His direct address to us because He knows, hey, this is something you as men need to be confronted on. And so I say all that to say that again, tonight, realize this is something that is an everybody issue. But men, if anybody should feel the impact of this verse, it should be us. It should be us. And so I'm not going to, as I preach tonight, necessarily preach just to fathers. I'm going to preach to us as parents, okay, fathers and because it applies to all of us. But I wanted to say that as we begin and allow the Spirit of God to take that and use that simply in our hearts to help us recognize we as men have tendencies in how we're wired to take authority, to take the lead. But in those realities of how God's wired us, there is a danger that we can fall into so easily that he's addressing here. But I think it's interesting, as he comes and he begins to speak to the parents, he says, "Provoke not your children to wrath." He says, listen, okay, he's just dealt with the children. Said, children, your response is to obey, to honor your parents. And by the way, there's no stipulations put on that. It doesn't say obey and honor them if they're honorable or if they deserve to be honored. No, it just says because they're parents, okay? But then he comes here and he says, but really, parents, don't provoke them to wrath. Their response to you is actually your responsibility. Can I say that again? Because that's a little bit counterintuitive to how we think. I'm all about personal responsibility, and it's not that the child isn't responsible before God for the decisions they make, but God says, hey, parents, in a very real way, the response of your children to you is your responsibility. Now, that's sobering. And he takes that and he says, and he brings it very narrow in the focus of what he's trying to deal with here, and he gives two commands in this text. Okay, two commands. The first is stop stirring up, provoke not, right? That's the title of the message. Stop stirring up. And the second command is start raising up. Okay, so I want to look at this first command, first of all, to stop stirring up. Now, this is a present negative imperative. The idea is not just make sure you don't do this, it is stop doing this. Because this is a very real thing that we often do. Stirring up. Now, it's a general admonition that he gives here. Provoke not your children to wrath. Don't stir them up to anger. You know, sometimes our efforts to put out the fires around us can cause more fires. But they're not fires that we can see. See, we're trying to put out the fires among our children, and that stirs up a fire sometimes within a child. Sometimes we don't even see it. We don't even know it. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, not from the parent perspective, from the child perspective, because you can remember when you were a kid and there was something that your parent did. Maybe they were good intention in what they were doing, and maybe they weren't. Maybe they were flying off the handle, and they were trying to deal with the problem, but in so doing, can I tell you, it hurt you. Some of you grew up in a home like that. And my point tonight is not to reopen all of those wounds and make you feel that pain again of what you went through, as much as it is just to help us realize this is a real thing. And some of you, if that's how you were raised, then that's sometimes all we know even in how to think. And we don't often see the fire that we cause because our actions cause our children to suppress that hurt. That they hold it inside, and so you respond in a way to try to handle the situation, and boy, inside there's something that snaps, but they don't show it on the outside because our natural response, for most, and again, there's some that will have the expert, but for many of us, the natural response is to kind of hold that inside. All right, I'm not going to let them see that. I'm not going to let that come out, but they're boiling inside, stirred up. There, nonetheless, and when we leave it unresolved, it only gets hotter. And so what Paul is coming and saying, listen, don't provoke your children. Don't be the cause of your child getting angry. Don't be the cause of your child getting angry. And I think it's interesting in the parallel passage in Colossians when Paul is really kind of following a very similar progression and making application to groups of people. He gives a similar admonition, but there he points out that an angry child quickly becomes a discouraged child. Colossians chapter 3, verse 21, he says, "Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged." Discouraged. And that word means disheartened, or they get to a place where they lack motivation. You know, sometimes in our trying to deal with the problem, trying to settle things, trying to get where they need to be, we can respond in a way that causes anger within and can come to a place where the kid says, what's the point? I was trying, but I can't do anything that pleases Dad. I can't do anything that pleases Mom. Just give up. Why? Why even try? And I've seen it in my own children even, and perhaps you have as well, or you, these thoughts ran through your mind as a child, with the idea of just, listen, I'm not even going to keep trying anymore. And you see this almost, they launch into even worse behavior. Why? It's not because they are all of a sudden just got way more sinful. They got discouraged and said, well, what's the point of even trying? Because you provoked them to anger. Now, they're responsible for their choices, but so are you as the parent. He says, don't let your child become a discouraged child. Don't provoke them to anger. Now listen, there's many ways that we can stir up anger and resentment in a child. Many, many ways. I have a few written down in my notes here. We can stir up anger and resentment in a child through an endless litany of petty rules. Okay, where there are things we're just, the list gets longer and longer and longer, and it gets to a point where they say, I can't keep track of all of this, and you can't either, and so there's no idea what are the expectations, and how, instead of it being clear, this is what obedience looks like, and this is what's required of you. It's all of this stuff that just is because you flew off the handle and said, you're not going to do that anymore. And then you try to hold them accountable to it, and you do sometimes, and you don't other times. Can stir up anger. Public shaming for failures can stir up anger in a child. Broken promises. Changing expectations where the goalpost is constantly moving. A lack of presence, you're just not there. See, sometimes it's not even the things that you say and do, but it could be possible just the fact that you aren't there to say or do anything because you're so consumed with work or whatever it is. And you're just gone all the time. You're not there in those moments when, boy, your presence is so important. An unwillingness to listen. I've found in my own life, and I've seen it, just an observation of others, how easy it is for when a child to come up and start talking, we automatically assume we know what they're coming to say. And so we don't even listen. Or we let them say the first half of the sentence or the first sentence, but not the second and third they were trying to say to tell you. We just jump in and assume, I know exactly where this is going, instead of actually listening. Provokes to anger. Hypocritical living. Boy, that can stir up anger and resentment in the child. Big time. Where you go to church and you act one way and come home and act totally different. Or where you say, this is what we should do, but you don't live any of it. Now listen, I understand none of us are perfect and we all fail. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where there's clearly a double standard of what this is what you're saying and this is what you're doing. And you try to hold them to something that you don't even do. It can stir up anger and resentment in a child. Performance acceptance. Do you understand what I mean by that term? Where a child, whether or not they feel accepted by you, is all dependent on how they do. And so if they misbehaved, you won't talk to them. You push them away. If they're doing well, then you're all about them. But you only accept them based on their performance. And you say, oh, parents don't do that. Oh, yes, parents do that all the time. And it's damaging. It stirs up anger and resentment within the heart of a child. Conflict in marriage can stir up anger in a child as they watch and they see mom and dad arguing with each other all the time. Where there's not a closeness, not a nearness, but they're at odds. Boy, over time, the child starts to feel like they have to pick sides. And now they're angry too because their parent is angry at the spouse. All of these ways can stir up anger and resentment in children. Selfish communication can stir up anger and resentment. You know, there's a way that we can communicate with our children that is a frustration and a discouragement to them. And I want to show you another passage of Scripture that the Lord just linked these two passages together in my heart, in my mind, and boy, when it's wed together with this passage that we've looked at, it brings us to a very specific application that, I'll be honest, I believe is one of the primary ways that parents provoke their children to anger. Turn to Proverbs chapter 15. We're going to come back here to Ephesians 6, so if you want to put a piece of paper in there or something to hold your spot, you can do that. But turn to Proverbs chapter 15. I believe this is one of the primary ways that we as parents provoke our children to anger. It can be true in other relationships as well. It can be true in a way that we provoke our spouse to anger. Notice here, verse number 1 of Proverbs chapter 15. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. You see it? What is it that provokes to anger? Grievous words. Now that's in contrast to a soft answer that he says, with that turns away wrath, that diffuses wrath, that keeps the anger down instead of stirring it up. Well, a soft answer, that's an answer that the idea of that word is it's tender in tone and substance. It's patient, it's gentle. Is that how we speak to our children? In contrast, which again, this Proverbs, this is how the parallelism so often works in Proverbs, and the poetry of it is the very contrast here. But grievous words stir up anger. Grievous words are words that are painful, hurtful, sorrowful. They cause sorrow. I think of it this way. Grievous words are words that sting. Well, we all know how to make stinging comments, don't we? And in fact, we almost sometimes treat it like it's a virtue to be able to land a good, ooh, feel that? I can remember as a teenager, there'd be a statement made, we would like, ooh, yeah, that one's, boy, you nailed that one. I wonder, how often do we communicate that way with our children? with our spouse. Can I tell you what the writer of Proverbs is saying? When you communicate that way, you are provoking. You're stirring up anger. Grievous words, words that sting. You've probably seen it, like I have, in the grocery store. A mom with her child or a couple of children, and the one child is asking for things or misbehaving in some way, and she starts lighting into it. I mean, just yelling in the store. Have you ever seen this before? I've seen it on numerous occasions. And every time I do, my heart just sinks, and I'm just thinking, oh, she doesn't. Do you realize what you're doing? I mean, literally just yelling. What do you think you're doing? And you just be quiet. You shouldn't be talking in here. This is the blah, 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 blah. Boy, they're making a good speech. They're landing it. And provoke it to anger. I see it all the time in the grocery store with lost people. But I wonder how often we see it in the hallways of a church like this. I wonder how often it happens behind the doors of a Christian home. Tense words, threats, frustrated words. Isaiah, Jeremiah, stop it. Lamentations, you too. Listen, if you're angry, your words will provoke to anger. If you're irritated, your words will provoke to irritation. If you're frustrated, your words will frustrate others. Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. And I think that I'm afraid that we often excuse our frustrated response by thinking of it as sternness. And God's dealt with me about this. Listen, I'm not angry at them. I'm just a stern disciplinarian. But listen, there's times when we need to communicate the incredible seriousness of sin and the consequences that will follow if we don't deal with that. There absolutely are. A seriousness that needs to be there. But I'm afraid that more often than not, more often than we'd like to admit, we cross the fine line from sternness into anger. And we speak grievous words. And oftentimes we don't even realize it. Because we're not quite sure where that line is between sternness and anger. It's somewhere in there, but I don't think, I'm sure I didn't cross it. Listen, if you're not quite sure where it is, your kids certainly aren't sure where it is. And all they can see is, well, it's just anger. While you're calling it sternness, your children are feeling the sting of grievous words. Ambrose Bierce said, "Speak when you're angry and you'll make the best speech you will ever regret." Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, maybe your children aren't in the home now, but you can remember those moments. Yeah. Where there was a lot of grievous words. We often know it's true, but we just don't want to admit it. I'm not willing to actually face it and say, well, I can't keep going this way. Why do we respond this way? Why is it that it's so easy to just lash out with that sharp comment, with that tense word, instead of being gentle, patient, kind? Why is it so easy to raise our voice at somebody? And it feels so counterintuitive to just lower it and speak gently. Why? I believe the reason that we often respond in these ways is because we're responding to our children as a problem to solve instead of as a heart to shepherd. Say, listen, this is an issue. We need to get this problem solved. And instead of realizing, listen, no, there's a heart here that needs to be molded and pointed to Jesus. That behavior that they're doing, that they're indulging in their sin, it's making our life difficult. Or maybe it's embarrassing to us, and so we want it to stop, and we want it to stop now. And so, boom, I know how to do this. Boom, talk this way. That'll make them stop. That'll shut them up. And it might work for now, but it's stirring up anger that though you may not see now, tell you what, it's building. And one day, it's going to come out, and you'll wonder, how do I ever solve this? You see, that the problem is that when we just want to stop the thing that's embarrassing to us, or we want to stop the behavior that disrupts our life, that makes things difficult for us, you know what it is? And we're focused on that. That is a selfish motivation. It's a completely wrong focus. And so in the long run, it is ineffective because the flesh and the anger never works the righteousness of God. But it's not just ineffective, it is damaging, friends. It's damaging. And it may be tonight that there's some who need to humble themselves and go to your children and apologize. Admit you're wrong with a broken heart. Maybe you need to bow before the Lord and say, Lord, I'm seeing it. Oh, Lord, would you break my heart over this? And then go and get right with those that you've wronged. Go to your children and seek to admit, hey, listen, did you so wrong in this? All these times that I provoked you to anger by my grievous words. Listen, all these times that I cared more about me than I did about you. And your heart for God. Maybe it's recent that those grievous words fell from your lips. Maybe it's a long time ago that those words fell from your lips. But you've never humbled yourself and admitted, boy, I was wrong. I'm thinking right now I have some relatives, cousins, who it's been decades since they've spoken to their parents. Because of grievous words. I don't know everyone in this room. I hope that's not the situation for you, but you know what? It happens on a fairly regular basis. Where children grow up, they leave the home and they never want to, because they felt the sting all the time at home. And yes, there's part of them that longs to be with mom and dad, but there's also a part of them that says, I don't want to submit to that anymore. Grievous words, stirred up anger. Listen, God may be calling you to say, you know what, I need to go to that one that I did wrong. Can I encourage you, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5 that if we know that our brother, one close to us, has something against us, it's our responsibility to go and seek to be reconciled. He says, listen, if you're going to bring your gift to the altar and there you remember that your brother has aught against you, go. First be reconciled. Then come and offer your gift. It's all nice and good that we come to church and we sit here and we worship the Lord through our singing and we give and we read the Bible and we have Bible conversations. It's all nice and good, but the Lord is saying, listen, If you know that you've done wrong, if I bring that to your attention, he says, stop. Go. Get it right. Man, if God opens your heart and shows you, listen, you provoked to wrath. You were filled with grievous words that stirred up anger. Well, go. Get it right. Humble yourself and say, God, you're right, I'm wrong. Lord, help me as I go. I want to be right with my children in this area. My wife tells of a time when my father-in-law, who I mentioned a little bit this morning in the Sunday school time, but he very much struggled with this in the early years of parenting. Grievous words, getting angry, lashing out at the kids. And she remembers the day when he lashed out at them and walked out, and God smote his heart. And he ended up coming back into them and sitting them down and begging with tears for their forgiveness. And told them, by the grace of God, with the help of Jesus, I will never do that again. Got to tell you, there's not a more gentle man that I know in the way he interacts with people. I mean, when everybody's frustrated and there's reason to be uptight, patient and gentle. Now that's God transforming a life. But you know where it started? Humility. Being willing to sit down with his little children and say, I've been wrong. Some of you need to take that step. I don't know you, I don't know your situation, but I'm just guessing in a room with this many people, there's some who we need to take that step. Perhaps your children are grown out of the home, but you still need to take that step. Don't stop stirring up. By the way, as I mentioned earlier, this kind of communication can take place in other relationships, like between a husband and wife. Some of you in your husband-wife relationship, there's grievous words. And whether we want to admit it or not, they're stirring up anger. Provoking. And more so probably in the marriage relationship than with children, though it can be true with children as well. There's sometimes that sinister satisfaction in knowing, boy, I landed at that time. May God help us. Listen, as the people of God, a husband and wife, followers of Jesus, our relation, even when there's things we have to work through, when there's disagreements, we should be able, with the help of Jesus, to have those disagreements with gentleness, patience, compassion towards one another. Harsh words have no place among the people of God. A soft answer, tender, gentle. Oh, listen, stop stirring up. Don't be a pot stirrer. Back in Ephesians chapter 6. Stop stirring up, provoke not your children to wrath. It says, he doesn't say just stop. Just stop it. No, he says, here's what you should do instead. Start raising up. Bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Listen, stop using your words to stir up, to beat up, and start using them to bring up, to raise up, to lift up. I want you to understand the context of raising up. He says here with these words, bring them up. The idea of that root word has the idea of to feed or to nourish. One commentator put it this way, he says, the picture is of caring for someone and giving that person what he or she needs to live and grow. That's your role as a parent, as a spouse, to say, listen, I want to give this person, I want to set the table with everything that they need so they can grow, so they can flourish. When I think of this concept of bringing them up, there's one image that comes to mind, and I believe that the words used lead to that image, and that's the image of a shepherd. A shepherd who's gently, patiently, kindly, tenderly raising those sheep. And that's what God's called us to do, to shepherd our homes. Listen, dads. You're called to be a shepherd who leads gently. You're not a dictator who enforces commands. Oh, listen, your children need to obey. I'm not saying that at all. They need to obey. They should obey. Absolutely. But you need to approach as with the heart of the shepherd. You're here to nourish them. And look, the components are given here for raising up. It says, bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. One has said there's an education here that stretches into life and behavior. It's about teaching wisdom with an eye to God. Learning, say, I want to teach you how to live life with your focus on God. What does it mean to walk through life? What does that look like? It says to nurture your children. That word nurture has the idea of discipline. That's the word. In other places, it's in 2 Timothy chapter 3. It's called their instruction in righteousness. That's something the Word of God does in our life. Instruction in righteousness shows us how to live. In Hebrews chapter 12, this same word is translated as chastening. Oh, that's not pleasant to talk about. But it's essential. But see, the point of this nurturing, this discipline, is not just to modify the behavior of your children. It's to shepherd their hearts towards God, like we talked about this morning. There's a total difference. If my goal is simply to say, I want you to stop doing that, then that's where we stop. And you know what? We can find some way to make that happen. Maybe my grievous words will make that happen. But if my goal is to shepherd that, to use this opportunity to point them back to God, say, this is what it means to be a God lover. This is what it looks like. See what, you're taking this step and you're doing this, and that goes totally against what it means to love God. And here's what God says about that. And here's some correction, some discipline, and there's a biblical way to discipline, and we'll see if we get into that this week, but just gentle, careful, not angry, consistent discipline. But it's not to say, hey, you're doing this because I'm so mad at you. No. It's because you don't understand. We're trying to cement the lesson as we direct our eyes back to God. You need to understand that choices have consequences. You can choose, you can make your decisions, you can choose what you do, but you cannot choose the consequences. And when we walk with Jesus, He's going to lead us in the way that's a pathway of blessing and joy, rather than the hardship that comes when we choose our own way. Don't shy away from that, but realize, listen, I'm going for the heart. Listen, there's times when we're in a disciplined situation, and maybe we've worked through the situation at hand, and finally they've gotten to a place where they said, yeah, okay, I was wrong. But it's obvious, I know, they still don't see it. The heart issue we haven't gotten to. And so you know what I know? I'm not done yet. My time, my investment, my nurturing of them in that moment, we haven't reached it yet. Not because I want them to come out and I'm looking for where they have to be crying before they're done with what. No, it's not that at all. I want to see that in their heart they realize what this means about them and God. And there comes to a place where they realize, oh, it's not just that this was mean to my brother. This was something that grieved the heart of God. And I don't want to do something that grieves the heart of God. Now, I'm telling you, you know why we don't go to the heart issue so often? Because it takes way more time. And we just don't seem to have enough time. Right? Because I've got to get to this other thing I was busy with. There's been times I've come home from wherever I've been. When I was working, when I was on staff at our church, would come home from a day of work, or sometimes I'm out visiting or whatever, preparing, and messages, and I come back, and there's times my wife said, "Oh, it's been a rough day," and she said, "I didn't feel like I got anything done. It's just been all day long. I feel like I've been just dealing with problems, discipline, whatever." And, in those moments, I have to look at my dear wife, and she's just so faithful and so passionate to just raise our children for the Lord. I tell her, "Listen, honey, you got the most important thing done. It's okay if dinner's not ready yet. That's okay. It's all right. It's okay if you didn't get all the laundry done today. It's okay if the house is kind of messy right now because you were investing in the life of one child, and so some of the others just, didn't have oversight like we would like to have them to keep things clean and tidy. You're going for the heart. That's what we're seeking. Don't settle for just modifying behavior. Go for the heart. Don't just settle for making so, okay, things are okay now between us. Go for the heart. Get to the heart issue. Nurture. That's what discipline's about. And then it says an admonition, and that word to admonish is the idea of instruction, correcting wrong thinking. The word etymologically means to place into the mind. It's the idea of taking truth and trying to get that into their mind, into their heart. So there's correction, there's discipline that comes, and there's this giving them truth, helping them see, this is what is right and true. Admonish your children. Don't just tell them, stop doing wrong. Okay, now help them, show them how to think right. What do we do? How do we do right? Listen, I know we're dealing with children, and again, there's many in the room who you're past this stage of raising children. But these are the dynamics that God calls us to have in every relationship. When there's conflict, don't just settle for, okay, well, we find a way to coexist in this thing. We're here, we're still together. There's a little bit of, we're still a little bit, whatever. No, go for the heart. Go for your spouse's heart. Seek to understand. Seek to get to that place where there's a oneness. Boy, it may need to be that there's just truth. We need to go back, well, what about what God says here? Come back to the Word of God. Oh, raise up instead of stirring up. Have that heart of a shepherd. I want you to notice the final words of verse number 4. He says, bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Of the Lord. This is the focus of raising up, and certainly ties in with what we looked at this morning. It's interesting, verse number 1, children says, obey your parents in the Lord. Children are supposed to obey in the Lord. And here, parents are to train and to instruct in the Lord. What does this point to the fact that He is supposed to be at the center of our relationships? He is supposed to be at the center of the teaching and the learning that's going on. One said it this way, this is the highest duty of Christian parents. As Dale puts it, parents should care more for the loyalty of their children to Christ than for anything besides. More for this than for their health, their intellectual vigor and brilliance, their material prosperity, their social position, their exemption from great sorrows and great misfortunes. Listen, it comes back to right where we talked about this morning. The point of this is to get them back to that place of their focus is on the Lord. You cannot do that if you're angry. Because all they can see when we are angry is you. But if we'll stop trying to solve this ourselves, and we as the parent will come to Jesus and say, Jesus, I need your help right now. I want to show them Jesus. In this moment when humanly there's a reason you should feel irritated. Lord, help me to show them Jesus right now. And there's a gentleness and a patience that comes in your response as you work through that situation. And listen, I'm not saying that's always easy. I've had situations with our children where they're saying things to me where I think, where on earth did you come up with that? Or where have you heard somebody say that? Like, that's the stuff that, like, naughty kids say on cartoons, and you've never seen that. Like, where did that come from? That you would talk like that to your parents. And there's something inside of me that says, how dare they? And in that moment, Lord Jesus, okay, they need to know that they can't talk that way to their parents. They do. But how we approach that conversation, the heart it comes from, makes all the difference in the world. Everything changes in the way that you communicate with your child when you commit to the goal of shepherding their heart to love Jesus instead of just shaping their behavior to make your life or even to make their life easier. Sometimes parents, I think, and with good intention, say, listen, you can't do that because if you do that, then, and we're upset about it, because if you do that, this is what's going to end up happening, and you don't want to be that. Nobody's going to like you, and they're not going to want to, so you don't want to have that kind of thing. And we can be just as mad about what could happen if they don't solve the problem, instead of realizing, okay, are those factors? Maybe those are factors, but that's still not directing their heart. We don't do that because we love Jesus. Do you see the difference? I wonder, are we provoking? Can I put it this way? God isn't just calling you to raise children. He's calling you to make disciples who love Jesus. That's the goal. Those who are committed to following Jesus. And so listen, Mom, when the frustration happens and boy, they disobeyed again, remember, you're here to raise disciples, not just to get them to stop it. Not just to try to have a good home. No, I'm here to get them, to lead them to love Jesus. Your child's response to you is your responsibility. Sobering. I know we can look at something like that and we can think, man, I failed so much. I feel that. Man, I failed so much. Some of you perhaps can look back at all of your parenting and feel like, man, I really blew this. Can I tell you, wherever you're at, we have a God who is full of grace and full of compassion, and a God who's masterful at taking even the areas where we have blown it. And if we'll humbly come to Him and trust Him and be willing to acknowledge our sin and seek to make those things right with those that we've wronged, can I tell you, God can still take and redeem those areas where we've really blown it. Now listen, I don't know what that will look like. I don't at all. I can tell you there's a God who is marvelous in turning our brokenness into sweet blessings. Several weeks ago, I have to think about how long ago it was. But earlier this spring, we were in a church ministering, and I preached there on the matter of the priority of reconciliation, not this message, but some of the stuff, getting right with those that you've wronged. And after that message, there was a couple of parents, hadn't been saved real long, who hadn't talked to their children in quite a while. They've been unable to because of just the situation. I think their children were maybe in foster care or something like that. And God moved in their heart about taking responsibility for what they'd done, for how they had parented. And with the help of the Lord, they were able to go and take that step of humility and just sit and, hey, this is what we did, and it was wrong. And they had the first real conversation they'd had with their children in an extended period of time. I don't remember the exact length. And God opened up a door to restore a relationship that had grown tense, cold, broken. I don't know where you're at tonight. I don't know what it's been. But I wonder tonight, are we stirring up anger? Or are we committed to say, you know what, wherever I'm at in these relationships, I just want to be someone that is pointing people to Jesus, that's making disciples of Jesus. It comes down to these simple commands. Stop stirring up. Start raising up. Trust Jesus. Say, Lord, by your grace, I'm going to trust you to give me the strength to be humble about where I've been wrong and to start to take steps forward, embracing that heart of a shepherd towards my children. To actually say, listen, I'm here to nurture this heart and lead that heart to Jesus. To love God. Listen, friends, we don't have to live angry. We don't have to live with this provoking life. I mean, I know some of you feel like that's the pattern I've done for so long. There is a God who can change us and transform us. Perhaps it's in your marriage. There needs to be just some humble conversation. Listen, I talk to you so irritated this way and here and this, but when you do this, it really just ticks me off, and that's wrong. I shouldn't be ticked off. It's not a big deal, really. I shouldn't be doing that. I shouldn't say those things that I say. Just take responsibility. Acknowledge the wrong and trust God to lead us forward with a soft answer, with a heart that's shepherding those that God has given us responsibility for. Let's bow our heads to pray. I realize the message tonight is very pointed, very specific, and maybe sometimes difficult to think of having an actual visible response. To come forward and pray. I understand. But I want to encourage you tonight. We're all in the same boat in so many ways. We're all needy. We all need Jesus. And really, the step of action is first we need to come to God and acknowledge our wrong before Him. But the bigger step of action then is to, I shouldn't say bigger, but just as essential, is to have, as we have dealt with our sin with God, we need to then go to those that we've wronged. And that, friend, that's a step that, you're going to need to take when you go from this place. That's where the real invitation is. I wonder tonight, if God has dealt with you, would you respond to Him? Maybe you need to come to the front here in just a moment after we pray and the piano will play. Maybe you need to come to the front and you need to humbly acknowledge before God, I've been wrong. And maybe you need to commit to the Lord. I'm going to go to those that I have wronged, and I'm going to seek to make this right by the grace of God. I'm going to seek to start raising up with that heart of a shepherd. So I'm going to pray, and then following that, we'll stand, and the piano will play. If God's dealt with you, I want to give you the opportunity to respond. If you need to get that right with the Lord, you come, you can kneel here in the front, speak to the Lord. But don't just stop there if God's dealt with you. Take the steps that go beyond this room into the lives of those that you need to make right. Lord, thank you for your word that speaks so pointedly to the things we struggle with, we wrestle with. Lord, I pray, would you help us, even in this moment, to have your humility, to say yes to you as you've been dealing in our hearts. Strengthen us and lead us forward, I pray, even now. We give you full sway to have your perfect way here. In this moment, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand to our feet. If God's dealt with you, the piano's going to play. And you come if God's dealt in your heart here tonight as the piano plays.